This video is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing should be taken as factual. This is all my astrological opinion. Please enjoy. Hey everybody, this is Sonia with Melanin Goddess Life. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another astrological video. So in today's video, we're going to be doing another celebrity reading. And this particular video is going to be a little bit different because the celebrity we're going to be highlighting is the infamous Stanley Cup. Now, this is my first time ever hearing about the Stanley Cup. So I had no clue what everybody was talking about. But of course, through social media, all the social media platforms and through the news outlets, apparently the Stanley Cup is very, very popular. So with that being said, the astrologer in me was interested in finding out, like, how did this happen? What's going on? What made this Stanley Cup so popular? So I'm going to do a quick video and just in my astrological opinion, just kind of look at some things with regards to the Stanley Cup and see if we can try to pinpoint how this came about and how this craze came about. So without further ado, let's talk about the Stanley Cup. So the Stanley Cup was born, i.e. developed on September 2nd, 1913 in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, which makes the Stanley Cup a Virgo sun, Libra moon, and a Scorpio rising. Now, when I looked at the moon sign, which is a Libra moon, which is all about collaboration, and through my research that I did, I noticed a trend with the Stanley Cup is that the Stanley Cup really takes off when it is collaborated with someone. So when there is a big star, someone that is endorsing this thing, this is when I noticed that there was a pattern that the Stanley Cup would get very, very popular. And as I went through the timeline, I noticed that it has its best success, again, when it is being sponsored by a celebrity. So that ties back to that Libra moon with regards to collaboration. Another thing that I noticed is with the Stanley Cup being a Scorpio rising, 2023 actually was a big deal for the eclipses because during the eclipse season in 2023, Taurus and Scorpio were hosting the eclipses. So this meant a lot of changes were going to be around, people with Scorpio placements and Taurus placements. And being that the Stanley Cup's rising sign, and that's the sign that reflects out to the public and what, and how we're perceived and how we're received. This meant there was going to be a lot of dynamic changes and transformations around this cup. So let's just back up just a few years to kind of like track the timeline of the rise, fall, and the rise again of the Stanley Cup. So the first thing that I noticed is the cup is currently 110 years old. Now, the theme of 110 years old by the annual perfection has everything to do with the third house. So from last September 2023 until next September 2024, the Stanley Cup is in the third house perfection year. Third house, marketing, communicating, getting our message out. This is the area that we have, we're able to get our voice out. We're able to get our reach out. So there's going to be heavy marketing with regards to the Stanley Cup. And they should be taking advantage of this energy that they have. So they really should be taking advantage of this year-long energy with marketing this Stanley Cup really, really heavily. I know they're in collaboration with having the cup in the Target stores. So again, that's a representation of the success for this cup comes from collaboration. Now, let's go back to when this particular style of cup became into existence with the quencher line, which was actually first launched in 2016. Now, from the research I did, it did not fare very well when it was launched. And one of the reasons that I think it did not do really well, because in 2016, Saturn was transiting Stanley Cup's first house. So the first house is, the house of our physical self. This is the house of our ego. This is the house of how we are perceived by the public and our reach and how we present to the world. So with Saturn being there, Saturn is that planet that, it comes a time with Saturn that, things are really difficult. So you're not going to be pretty much at your best when you are having Saturn transiting your first house. This is actually a rebuilding phase. This is a time to be perfecting yourself. So it's not surprising that the first launch of this cup didn't go well, because Saturn was in the first house, and it did pose challenges, as sometimes Saturn can do in the first house. So they went on to keep the cup going, marketing the cup. It didn't really do well in sales. And I think at about 2019, they decided to just do away with the cup. However, 2019, and I'm not really sure at what time during 2019, they relaunched the cup again. But this time, they did it in collaboration with, I believe, a track and field person or some very popular runner, and they had the cup marketed in a sports magazine. Now, the reason why the cup did really well at that point was because Jupiter was then at that time transiting its first house. Jupiter, the planet of growth, expansion, abundance, opportunity, putting yourself out there. This really helped heavily for the Stanley Cup to grow in popularity because it was in its first house. So it represented really well, and it leaned into that Libra moon energy by collaborating with someone with popularity in a particular area, a sports area. So it did do well. It grew in sales. I think the sales were like 70 million for that time in 2019. Now, fast forward to 2023, where currently the sales are at 750 million. So 2023, we talked about how that the Stanley Cup was in its third house perfection year. So it was about marketing. It was about the right campaign, that it got itself out there. It collaborated with Target. It had collaborated with Starbucks. So it was really, really out there in the way that it should have been. Also, when we go back to 2019, not only did the Stanley Cup have that Jupiter in the first house, the annual perfection year for 2019 for Stanley was the 11th house. And we remember the 11th house, groups, organizations, the internet, our worldwide reach. So it had a lot of energy behind it as it was moving towards 2023, when it really, really took off. We also look at the eclipses for 2023, that eclipse that we had in April, that was a solar eclipse in the sign of Aries, that highlighted its fifth house. So the creativity, you have to keep in mind that this is a succulent house. So this is one of the houses, the 2nd, the 5th, the 8th, and the 11th, where we do a lot of the developing of things that we want to progress on. So it was in the developing stages. It was in the creativity stages. It had Jupiter and also a Jupiter moon conjunction in that area during that time. And the North Node was transiting during that eclipse as well. So the creativity, the marketing, ties into that third house of how they got the message out about the Stanley Cup. All right. Another thing I looked at is that October the 14th eclipse that was in Libra, which was eclipsing in the sign of Libra, in the moon sign of the Stanley Cup, that was highlighting the 11th house, the reach, the masses. So all of this tied into the popularity of the Stanley Cup, in my opinion. Now, again, if I was telling them, the marketing strategy is always best for them is to always do things in conjunction with someone else. Again, this energy and the popularity should last them at least until this September. Not really sure what it's going to look like after that, but who knows? So this is just my short take on the popularity of the Stanley Cup. Leave me some feedback on how you feel about it. Let me know if you're a Stanley Cup owner and if I should get a Stanley Cup for myself. If you'd like a personal reading with me, please visit my website at www.melaningoddesslife.biz. Follow me on all the social media platforms. Thank you so much for your time, and you have a great day.